Last week it was announced that a new country will be making its debut as an invited guest at the 2025 Caribbean Series in Mexico. A few countries have made their debut appearance in the last 5 years, but this one is different. It's not even in the Caribbean. For the first time ever, Japan, a country all the way on the other side of the Pacific, will be sending a team to the Caribbean Series. Not a team from NPB, which is Japan's top level of professional baseball. That league is in its off-season, just getting its spring camp underway when the Caribbean Series takes place, January 31st to February 7th. Although it's fun to imagine a team like the SoftBank Hawks of Japan facing someone like Tigres del Licey from the Dominican Republic, it's just not the right time of year. The team from Japan will be Asian Breeze. Asian Breeze is a traveling baseball club for free agent players. They play in the late winter and early spring against MLB organizations and teams from the KBO and LMB. Players on Asian Breeze rosters are looking to get signed by teams in professional summer leagues. Last year, Trevor Bauer, having just finished a season in Japan with the Yokohama DNA Baystars, played for the Breeze before eventually signing with Diablos Rojos in the Mexican League. Most players for the Breeze, however, have a much lower profile. And it looks like the Breeze will be the only guest team, joining the champions from the 4 permanent members, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Mexico, and Venezuela. If you never followed the Caribbean Series, this might sound reasonable at first glance. You still get the 4 permanent members, plus 1 outsider to spice things up a little. But if you've been following the Caribbean Series, you know it's not just those 4 countries. 5 other Caribbean countries, all on a similar level, have taken part in the last 5 years. Panama participated in the last 5 Caribbean Series, rejoining after a nearly 60-year absence in 2019, when they hosted the series and shocked the world by winning it all. Cuba, one of the original participants, has had an on and off history with this tournament. A team from the Cuban National Series won it in 2015. The last appearance was by a team from the newly formed Cuban Elite League in 2023, one of the great baseball-playing countries of the Caribbean, but due to politics are unable to consistently take part in the series. Colombia, a last-minute replacement for the 2020 series in Puerto Rico when the Cuban team was unable to obtain visas in time. Colombia played in the Caribbean Series every year from 2020 to 2023 and made a Cinderella run to the title in 2022. A team from Curacao took part in the last 2 editions, by far the smallest of any country involved, but with a roster full of active and former MLB players and prospects, they managed to hold their own. The Nicaraguan League was represented for the first time at this year's edition, a long overdue invitation. They didn't win any games, but they made a good impression, only getting blown out in their final game. 2 years ago in Venezuela, 8 teams participated in the Caribbean Series. Only Colombia was left out. A year ago, the Colombian League again was not represented, and because it was taking place in Miami, the Cuban team was not involved. So there are 9 countries that have played in the Caribbean Series in the last few years, all of them with active Major League players, several Major League prospects, and strong domestic leagues taking place in the winter that all crown a champion before the Caribbean Series begins. There's no need to look outside the Caribbean, since there are enough talented countries already in the region. It should be the goal of the Caribbean Series to get all 9 countries there at the same time, maybe even more than that. The Bahamas could send a team, maybe the Virgin Islands. Those 2 countries, territories, don't have domestic leagues of their own, but then again, Asian Breeze doesn't belong to any league either. They could always start up a club championship just for the purpose. The Curacao League played a 1-week season last December to qualify a team for the Caribbean Series. The only way I would be alright with a team being invited from outside the Caribbean would be to even out the number of teams. As I said, 9 teams have participated in recent years. Say you want to split them into 2 even groups. You invite 1 team from the outside, and now you've got 10 teams you can split into 2 5-team groups. And it would give the event some more international appeal. Let the other side of the world know this event is going on. Make it a different non-Caribbean invited guest every year. I would recommend the Australian League since they crown a champion around the same time, but the ABL champion has nowhere to play after that. Plenty of Major League prospects playing there too. But they're inviting a team from the other side of the world when 5 really good countries in the region are sitting it out. True, the 4 permanent members are the strongest members. A Venezuelan team holds the title right now. Dominican Republic has won 3 titles in the last 5 years. Puerto Rico and Mexico both have Caribbean Series titles in the last decade. But Cuba won it in 2015. Panama in 2019, Colombia in 2022. Curacao and Nicaragua could do it too if you give them enough chances. This sort of reminds me of when the Italian League champion was invited to the Asian Series. A team nowhere near Asia shouldn't be in the Asian Series, but at least in that case there was a good reason to try something out of the ordinary. It was a young series, and it was failing. They had to try something to give it more appeal and try to keep it alive, even if that meant turning it into something else. They had nothing to lose at that point. But the Caribbean Series has been going since 1949, full of tradition. So many Major League legends have played in the Caribbean Series, both from the Caribbean and North America, and it's only been getting bigger lately. They smashed the old attendance records when they played in Miami earlier this year. All that they've been doing lately has been working, and that is trying to include every Caribbean country with a good domestic league where players who are in the Major League system in the summer spend their winters, even if the countries are not on the exact same level. Also, I don't think most people in Japan know or care about Asian Breeze. I think this event will pass next year with hardly anyone in Japan catching word of it, so I don't know what they're trying to gain here. Some reasons for excluding teams. I've already said politics is a reason why Cuba's often excluded. Also, there was a dispute between Cuba and the Caribbean Baseball Confederation. The two sides had very different versions of the reasons for that dispute. There was also a participation fee that some leagues may have been unwilling or unable to pay. For the 4 permanent members, it's no big deal. Other leagues are a little more cash-strapped, or maybe they just don't feel like they should have to pay so much, or anything at all. As far as I can tell, no reason was given as to why all 5 countries, Cuba, Colombia, Panama, Nicaragua, and Curacao, have all been ruled out. That's the way it was stated, ruled out for the next Caribbean Series. Prior to 2014, when Cuba made its return, it was just the 4 permanent members year after year. Maybe they want to go back to that. Maybe they didn't like it when Panama and Colombia made their shocking runs to the title. And maybe they cringe at the idea of Curacao or Nicaragua doing the same. Curacao has looked like they might be able to pull it off. Nicaragua hasn't been given enough time. Or they might have just felt like too many teams were being included, like 4 is enough. I don't know the real reason, to tell the truth, but if they want to go back to just those 4 teams, plus 1 non-Caribbean invited guest, then so be it. It's their decision to make. But that leaves us with 5 champions of professional leagues with nowhere to play once they've won the title in their country. Sure, it's nice to be the national champion, but when you've gotten used to taking it up a level and playing against all these other champions, you might feel like something's missing when your winter ends with only a national championship. So that brings up the discussion of an alternative to the Caribbean Series. This is not an original idea, it's been tried in the past. Most recently, last winter, the Intercontinental Series was scheduled for the last week of January, with the championship taking place on February 1st, the same day that the Caribbean Series kicked off. It was supposed to take place in Barranquilla, Colombia. The Colombian League was left out of the Caribbean Series, so this was their way of providing an alternative. A Cuban team was invited. Cuba was also sitting out the Caribbean Series. A team from Curaçao's professional league. Same league but different team as the one representing Curaçao at the Caribbean Series. Teams from Japan and Korea. Not top-level teams, but lower-level teams of Japanese and Korean players, and an independent league team from the U.S. Sounds like an interesting little series they had put together, but nothing that would take attention away from the Caribbean Series. However, what made it interesting was that the Cuban team was not going to be the champion from the Elite League, but rather a team full of Cuban expats and defectors in the U.S. Because of this, the Colombian government withdrew its support for the event. Apparently, they were under pressure from the Cuban government to do so. The Colombian government needed Cuba's support in their bid to host the 2027 Pan Am Games. And just 10 days before the Intercontinental Series was scheduled to begin, it was canceled. Well, they tried, but that was just Colombia. Now they've got a whole group of rejected Caribbean countries. If they all come together, maybe they could organize something that baseball fans in those countries will get excited about. Something they'll support, something they can continue year after year if the door to the Caribbean Series remains closed. They'd have champions from Colombia, Panama, Nicaragua, Curacao, and some sort of team from Cuba, preferably the champion from the Cuban Elite League. Later, maybe the Bahamas or the Virgin Islands could join in. And if they're not strict about teams being from the region, get the ABL champion involved. This would still be the B tournament of the Caribbean Series. The main one with Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Mexico, and Venezuela would still have the better competition, but they'd be providing an entertaining alternative. Then years down the road, the organizers of the 2 tournaments set aside their differences and decide to join forces in one big happy tournament. Or perhaps the B tournament is a qualifier to be the invited guest for the main Caribbean Series. If their concern was that too many teams were being involved, this would be a way to be inclusive while also keeping the Caribbean Series a smaller, more elite competition. A lot of possibilities there. I just don't like the way they're planning it for next year, where less than half the recent Caribbean Series countries are taking part, while a team from completely outside of the region gets in. It was going so well, and now it seems like they're taking a step backwards. If there's any information I'm missing, something that might help to explain what they're trying to do, please let us know about it in the comments. Anyway, that's just what I think. Let me know what you think down in the comments. That's all for this one, and until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya!